Alright, so hey again everybody, here without my assistant this time, looking at what's a really important question, which is how was the Southwest version of Manifest Destiny different than its Northwest counterpart? If you look at the slide just prior to that question, which is the Santa Fe Trail leading into parts of Mexico, which will, at the end of hostilities in the Mexican War, become American in territory, right? To the victor belong the spoils, after all. And its Northwest counterpart in just the expansion into Oregon, the Northwest, finally finding the Pacific Ocean, right? Lewis Clark finally were able to navigate almost a half century before this. Now you have that difference, that distinction, and what are they? I think we've alluded to some of them already in previous clips, right? Whether it be racial elements, and it seems like that could be an overwhelming reason for at least the press being driven that way, because remember the Mexican War is very political, it's very press driven though, so you have, as we said earlier, I think, James Polk doesn't have to do much here to forward his cause. Okay, he can let the press, who controls and who has access to so much of a white audience, right, Jacksonian Democrats, and now Polk Democrats, really, because Polk is the, that he's really taken up that torch. In fact, they nickname him Young Hickory after Old Hickory, which is Jackson's nickname. So it does coincide beautifully with what's happening in Mexico. So, continuing with this, we had a slide that asked, or just, stated in the 20s, a new Mexican centrist government. So first of all, you want to know what centrist means. In this case, you can kind of see a similarity between our government under the Articles of Federation being so separated and now under a constitution. So Mexico is going through their own little growing pains and has developed a new type of government. And in so doing, they've made some restrictions. So I've mentioned in this statement immigration, outlawing slavery, and raising taxes, all three of which would really hurt whites in the South, Americans migrating to the South and now being part of Texas, which is part of Mexico at this point. And particularly outlawing slavery, as we know is such a hot issue, or a hot button issue at this point. Stephen Austin's role is important because of his speculating and speculation interests, right? We've mentioned, I think, probably the first week or first couple weeks of school, speculation being an important word economically speaking in American history, whether it be oil today, whether it be tobacco in Jamestown, or whether it be now simply land and the acquisition of land, and Texas is a lot of land, and so will the Mexican cession be. So in the 1820s, you have a really great reason for Stephen Austin to promote American migration to Texas because of the huge amount of land that's there, and the fact that he owns so much of it and now can sell off bits and pieces of it to those settlers and make so much money for himself. And there's a picture of Stephen Austin, obviously. And how this becomes a situation of independence for Texas is pretty simple, actually. Texans are encouraged to migrate to Mexico. Mexico wants Americans to come in at first to develop the land that's there. Never state, although they are not advocates of slavery, never explicitly or expressly saying you can't bring your slaves. And when this new centrist government comes into power in the late 1820s, they change that stance and very dramatically say slavery will now be outlawed in this territory. You're not able to hold slaves as property. You're not allowed to bring any further slaves in here. And Texans, like other Southerners I think would be, are very upset about this, and to the point where they protest, and eventually, because they're not heard, and there's a lot of similarities made here to the American Revolution, that they declare their independence from their Mexican oppressors, they would say. And you have a flag that's very reminiscent to the American flag with a star in the red, white, and blue. Of course, they are the Lone Star State today, and there's one star there. And of course, they're not part of America yet. They are their own republic and their own nation. But there is certainly a reason to believe, at least in their minds, that eventually they will become part of the Union, or want or desire to become part of the Union, which most of them, I think, do at this point. But there are some who just prefer to stay as a republic. So very much is the way that Vermont has done this, and we'll see with California, and there's been some other ones along the way that have kind of worked that same way. You have a Texan population, and I'm looking at the Liberty or Death flag here as well, that would give you instances of American Revolutionary War, right? It's the same phrase that was used during that period of time, and so on and so forth. So I'll stop it there, and we'll come back to battles in a minute, although you know as well as I do, AP test will not test you on military history. You do want to know some of the social consequences, political consequences that could result from those battles. All right.